Avengers! Assemble. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Excelsior, the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast. This is your episode for January 23rd, 2021. I'm your director, Christian Buckley, joined by the Apex legend, Jack Martin.
Hello, Christian. Good to be here this week. It is a month very, very good for the MCU and very not so good for Marvel's Avengers, but it is a rebirth for Marvel, I would say.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because I found this last week, and I did the same exact thing again today, where we record on Fridays, right? I wake up, I make my coffee, I get comfy, I watch WandaVision, and then I'm like, hey, I got some time, let me just queue into Avengers and play some Avengers. So in a way, WandaVision's helping my enjoyment of Avengers too, because I just want to be in that Marvel world, and this is my answer for that, so...
Yeah, that's a good call. Like, Fridays can be our Marvel day.
Yeah, it's a very nice way to spend my mornings, and it gets me in a good mood by the time we record this year's show. So,
Totally.
we will go through, of course, our thoughts on this week's episode of WandaVision in the back end of the show, but we have a lot of Marvel's Avengers stuff to talk about this week. Not really anything in the realm of dates, but some interesting information about, how things have been going with Crystal Dynamics, and specifically recapping last week's dev stream and the absence of one this week. We will get to that, of course, but we're going to kick the show off the way we normally do with Fury's report, running through this week's War Table blog. If you want to run any of the priority missions for the week, the low power level mission is In Honor's Name. I cannot tell you what mission that was.
Same.
The high power level, however, is Private Eye, which is, I think, the final mission of Kate's operation, where you go through the portal and you meet up with Hawkeye in the past. I think that's that one.
Ooh, is this the one with the terrible frame rates?
Yeah, yes.
I might have to check this out on my PS5 to see what the deal is now, because, of course, PS5 has... a very good increase in terms of performance for Marvel's Avengers, so I'm gonna look it up right now, and I might just leave it off to the side for after this episode, so I can just see how it goes.
Yeah, it's a good call, and honestly, frame rate aside, I did like that mission, so it's a nice one to replay, I think, because just seeing the whole conclusion of Kate's arc it was fun, but.
Yeah, it was, I think, the most different of pretty much any of the missions we've seen so far. So I think it excelled at that. So I definitely want to check that back out.
For sure. If you want to do a harm room this week, the priority one will net you Invincible Iron Man #1 from 2004. So you can do that. I did that this morning as well. If you want... Wow, I am a fool. I realized I played the low power level mission this morning.
Which one was it?
It was the Pacific Northwest. It's the this is that room where you gotta hack the stuff.
Oh, that one, Christian. The room where you gotta hack the stuff. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think it's one of the like and we're back shield type runs in the Pacific Northwest. Like after the main campaign, the first post game quest. I think it's one of those missions.
Gotcha.
So I did that with Kate. Speaking of Kate, though, there was a new Marketplace update, of course. One thing stood out to me. We got a comic book skin for Kate Bishop that I might go in on.
Are you talking about the Kate Bishop, like, Young Avenger one?
Yes, it's an exotic skin. It's a gold. It is 1,400 credits or $15. I'm still sitting on like 3,800 right now from the base game. Thinking about it, it looks nice. I like how it looks. It's got like the coattails in the back. She's got a scarf on, got some sunglasses, hair's down. It's a pretty good looking skin, if I say so.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely Kate Bishop. It has like the sort of purple aesthetic to it. So I like how it's in line with that. I don't think it particularly sticks out to me, but I do prefer this over some of the other ones that have been featured. There's also an Iron Man one, which I'm looking at right now.
What's up with it?
It's like, it looks copper. It's like a one-tone Iron Man skin.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like the skinnier version of the Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest fan. It's not very, complex or anything. It's 1400, which I think is a little too much for this one.
Yeah.
But there that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. If you're still sitting on credits and they're burning a hole in your pocket, go for this, I guess. But I did want to highlight the Kate one because I'm familiar with this look for her from the Young Avengers stuff, like with her scarf. So I thought that was neat that they're doing that. Um, and I know we've gotten like allusions toward Planet Hulk. Hulk. We got like Gladiator Hulk. And Unworthy Thor as well. So it's nice that they're rolling out like at least one or two iconic comic book versions of skins. Obviously, we'd like to see that at a faster rate, but we did get a little bit of insight into the next few months of Marvel's Avengers because last week there was a Play with the Devs stream, and apparently, I'll clarify in this, last week there was a confusion of like, is this the first one of the new year? I don't think it was, but for some reason, like PR or whatever got this specific one in front of me, right? Like through their Twitter accounts, through the subreddit, people were saying like, "Hey, Play with the Dev stream today in like an hour." So it definitely seemed like they were making a bigger deal out of this one, and while there wasn't a lot of confirmation of things, there were some comments that I found very interesting from the team over at Crystal, and I pulled 5 of the highlights. If you want to run through these with me, Jack.
Yeah, sure. Let's hear it.
So we'll touch on skins because we were just talking the marketplace. One of the biggest pieces of info that I was interested in, it piqued my interest. They said that MCU skins are, and I quote, strongly, strongly, strongly being looked into.
This is good news.
Yeah. So what's your read on that then? Do you think there's a world where MCU skins don't come to this game?
No, I don't think that world exists at all.
Yeah.
I think anything we're about to talk to from this dev stream is stuff we have either speculated on or sort of expected to appear in this game. And this is one of those things. Like, Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics are in a really bad position with this game. I say that because it didn't meet their sales expectations, and they basically have to try to meet those initial expectations with DLC right now and get people back into the game. So they're in a bad position right now, and I think having a whole like dearth of MCU skins for a bunch of these characters is one of those draws, right? Where you can say, hey, a lot of the issues some people had with this game, which I think were somewhat unwarranted, were these aren't the MCU characters I know and like. These skins aren't what I'm familiar with. For them to come out and be like, here are the skins that people are familiar with for the past decade or so, that's a way to draw people into this game, particularly new people, I think.
For sure. I think that's a very good point. But like I already know, I can like see the YouTube videos also. It's like they're going to make us pay for the good-looking characters like obviously that's going to be what happens. Do you think that when this happens, do you think it'll be like how do you think they monetize that? Do you think it's going to be like a week by week, Thor Ragnarok Thor is in the shop this week, Iron Man 3 suit is in the shop this week, or do you think it would be along the lines of I don't want to slap a price on this, but in my head I think like for the core characters for everyone in the game at this point, $40 you get the skins for everyone. Like what avenue do you think they go? New challenge cards maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a whole bunch of ways I think they could roll this out. I think maybe a good play is to do like here's phase 1 MCU characters for those that apply. Of course, there's some characters in this game that weren't in phase 1. And then roll it out from there. They could also just be like, hey, we're gonna roll out these skins more organically, week by week, depending on the character, right? Like, a lot of people don't like the Phase 1 Cap costume. And I know there's a couple, but I know a lot of people's opinions on his costume sort of improved as the phases went on.
Yeah.
So that might just be like, for Cap this week, we have Winter Soldier skin. And for Iron Man, we have, I don't know, Iron Patriot, if they want to go weird. Something like that.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I could see a world also where, since you mentioned that the MCU characters aren't all in the game right now, there's a couple characters that aren't in the MCU yet that are in the game right now. I could see a world where, because whenever this is done, most likely a large percentage of the player base will have maxed out the challenge cards for the OG6. I could see a world where, since we're paying for challenge cards for new characters, this is how they're like, hey, pay for an Iron Man challenge card, and at the end you get the Iron Man skin for like the MCU or something.
Dude, you're speaking my language. Because I in that category where I've already done the challenge cards for everyone, including Kate.
Yeah.
So I'm ready for some new stuff because I want to go back and play as Tony, right? Who was my main. And I feel like there's no real point right now since I already have him at 150 in all. So yeah, that would be great. I think we've had conversations about that in the past where we were speculating on if they would just release new challenge cards, and I think that'd be a really great idea. And putting the MCU skins behind that is just a really great way to get people to sort of incentivize people to actually look into that. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, plus that's basically a full 60 if you get all 6 character packs, additional challenge cards, and I'm sure that's like what they'd want out of that from like a recouping costs scenario. And I think also you made a good point where it's like people have a certain affinity for certain looks in the MCU over others, to the point where each challenge card has about like 5 skins per character in it, right? Like, I feel like you could pull probably 5 skins for each MCU OG6 Avengers, across all their different versions, like especially Iron Man. Cap, you could get a Nomad skin, Winter Soldier, like you said. Like, there's a lot of room where I think dropping a challenge card makes more sense to divvy out these skins than just like hey, here's the $50, $40 pack. Here's one skin for every character,
Yeah.
So
now that you say that, I think the challenge card idea is the way to go. I'd be upset if they didn't do that now.
Yeah, I'd be happy with it as well, because I would love a new challenge card for Thor, honestly.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for challenge cards and any sort of battle pass. I know, like, I'm such a shill, but anytime the new Apex battle pass comes around, I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's do my weeklies. Let's do my dailies. I'm all about it.
It's fun.
Yeah, and it gets you back in every day.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of getting back into the game, though, they also mentioned that New Game Plus is currently in QA testing. So I'd assume it's relatively soon. I know New Game Plus and replaying the campaign was something that a lot of people wanted. Were you one of those people?
In a way, I find it bizarre that you just can't go and do that. Like, I've really never heard of that. Maybe it's the structure of the game itself being sort of like a games as a service in a way. I don't know if Destiny you can replay the campaign. Can you?
So with Destiny 2, it was really weird because in Destiny 1 you could replay the campaigns and you could just grind it out. That's what a lot of my grind in Destiny 1 was. But Destiny 2, it was actually very similar to how this works, where once you play through the campaign, in that world, it's like that stuff already happened. But if you go to the psychic warlock leader of the factions, every week she'd have 3 missions from the campaign that cycle out that like you could replay.
Okay.
So it is weird. This is in line, I think, with my experience of Destiny 2, so it hasn't shocked me that much. Personally, I don't know why I would want to replay the campaign unless it's like a solid way for me to carry over that progression and level up the characters again, or if we get an increase in level cap, I'd run through it again maybe to buff them up more. But for me, there's no strong incentive, I think, to replay the campaign right now.
Yeah. I think we both really liked the campaign, so
Oh yeah.
I think your looking to get a PS5, right? So
Yes.
I think once you do that, I think we might just run through that again just for the performance boost.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I think the game, once that drops, I'm sure the game will be different than it is in this state. So it'll be interesting to sort of go back and see what that looks like now.
Mm-hmm. You throw some more trophies on that. You do an extra little tab for trophies for the campaign again. Ooh.
Oh man, dude, we still gotta get that platinum.
Yeah, I'm slowly chipping away at it. I'm trying to catch up.
We're close. We're close.
You know what else is close?
Mm.
The cloning lab.
I'll believe it when I see it.
So specifically, they mentioned that the cloning lab is most likely the next thing to drop. The mission itself is ready. The only problem is that because normally right now multiplayer is crashing and there's still bugs with matchmaking and multiplayer as a whole is kind of still bungled, that carries over into the cloning lab. So as far as everything is concerned, the cloning lab is like done. The level is fully there. It's realized the mechanics are in. It's just because multiplayer crashes in the game currently, and that's still not fixed, that is also carrying over to this multiplayer experience. So,
Yeah, it's sad in a way because I feel like the cloning lab has been ready for months at this point, since Fran Mirabella is one of the people that has played it. So
yeah.
it was functioning back then. I'm sure it was buggy as hell, but it was at least a thing you could play in some regard. So it's sad that the crashes in multiplayer are holding it back, but it is one of those things, especially after the release of Cyberpunk, where it's like, in this game to an extent, you just can't release things now that are buggy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it's gonna distract from the experience itself. And this game, we've been saying it for months at this point. Like you can't release something for this game that's gonna, cause more harm to the public reception of this game, which is already pretty low at this point. So good on them for holding it back. I mean, it's been so long where if it releases, I don't know if it brings people back in. I think
Right.
it really needs to be tied to something like Black Panther, but this is the thing I'm most excited for, is like actual multiplayer content.
I agree. It is upsetting because I have enough people in my friends list that play this game enough that when the cloning lab drops, we can figure out a time and it can run through it. And I don't know if specifically the issues that multiplayer are bringing to the cloning lab are multiplayer as a whole or just matchmaking. Because if it's just matchmaking, that stings a little extra. Because like I got a squad ready, and
Right.
I'll get to this in a bit. But even last weekend, I was doing some missions with two other people, so we didn't have a full team, but we were running through some missions, and I had no complaints, no issues with the connection between each other. But yeah, I'm ready for the cloning lab. I really am. I'm ready to see some multiplayer content that incentivizes multiplayer content.
Yeah, and it seems like it'll be the most different addition to this game, which is sorely needed. So I'm excited. I mean, it goes without saying, but I've missed this game a lot. Like, there's just no real reason for me to go back in, and yeah, I'm hopeful that this comes out when it's ready, and hopefully that's soon.
Agreed. Another thing that they mentioned that is most likely a ways out, but will work towards incentivizing play, is a rework of gear. One of the people on the PR team on the stream mentioned that there is more functionality, features, incentives coming to gear. They mentioned that the team is looking at a lot of what players have been asking for, so like more modifications to it, more like diverse buffs and like stuff like that really makes you want to chase gear the way that I personally haven't felt playing this game. They did mention though that is most likely going to take a while. They are working on it currently. I'd assume it's not all hands on deck for that because there are more pressing matters like the multiplayer crashes, the cloning lab, other content that has been delayed. But what does that do for you? The idea of a reworked gear system is that going to be enough, you think, for you to like chase a build, or do you need more?
It depends, right? Because when it launched and as it stands right now, the gear system is very much random, right? You'll pick up something and maybe it'll have the mod you want, like maybe it's like pin particles, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have the stats you want. So maybe there will be like more like what you were saying, customizable gear
Mm-hmm.
options. Like you can pick up like a pin particle sort of gear, and then if you have, you could also pick up, I don't know, points where you can put into precision and resolve or something. Because you basically have to just keep picking stuff up until you get what you want. It's very
Right.
randomized. I don't know if they'll really let you be that customizable with it,
Mm-hmm.
because I know sort of the whole idea of RNG is that it is random, but hopefully
Right.
they give you more agency. That would be nice.
So what I would like, Ghost of Tsushima did this, and I compare it more to Ghost of Tsushima Legends than I would with Destiny, just because of the way the games are like work currently as they are.
Hmm.
In Ghost, you can use resources from doing dailies and weeklies or dismantling other pieces of gear. You can use those resources to re-roll stats and like modifications on your specific piece of gear that you like. So
Oh,
say I get a katana in Ghost that allows me to do the moon stance. Like that remains. That's what that katana is.
yeah.
But if I get a like 15% fire damage, if I get the ability to add a secondary stance to that blade,
Hmm.
those two things I can re-roll with my resources that I've been earning passively and from doing other things and just playing the game to get a chance at getting the buffs or debuffs or stat increases that I want for that piece of gear.
That is excellent. So you
Yeah,
keep the base, but you can modify the sort of tangential attributes.
basically, yeah. And I would love it. It's basically kind of like a crafting system because you're spending resources to re-roll. So I would welcome that in this game, honestly.
Yeah, from the way you described it, I that system sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer that to the current one we have, which is there's it's just basically a lot of farming until you get something that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Where I like that idea where you have some sort of semblance of control
Mm-hmm.
with your gear. Something else I was thinking about where if they would to maybe incorporate that just as a base, but with something like a raid, we've been talking about this. I think you mentioned this last week. If they tied gear to a raid,
Mm-hmm.
and by the end of it, maybe you go through a few stages, you pick up pieces, or maybe you do the whole raid over and over until you get like a full set of gear.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to use that full set, maybe that is tied to a particular skin.
Sure.
I think that'd be really cool. And I know as it stands right now, they purposely like don't attach gear to appearance, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a really big like piece of importance to something like a Destiny player who like will go through to get like a weapon or
Mm-hmm.
like a skin to like to show off to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll throw this in there too because I think this makes sense. The It seems like the capital R raid is going to be the leaked Wakanda one, and
Hmm.
I could see a world where the raid has an exclusive gear set that has like a new energy thing like gamma and pin particles, where it's like vibranium kinetic energy, kind of like Black Panther.
Yeah.
And if you get that full set from replaying the raid, maybe you get like a vibranium suit skin for whichever character you have the full set for. Like I think
Oh,
if we
yeah.
build something like that, that would be excellent. That would be a very fantastic incentive for me at least to want to play the raid over and over.
Right. Realistically, I don't know if we get something like that, like some the stuff that we want,
Hmm.
because that would be a pretty big retooling of how the gear system works.
Yeah, and
So like maybe some elements we get of
mhm.
that.
And to their credit, it sounds like they are working on a massive overhaul, and that's why they're saying, "Hey, it's going to take a while."
Yeah.
Also, sort of related, they threw this in there when they were talking about a gear rework, the idea of being able to swap out different heroics, which is something that we thought we'd be able to do pre-launch, right? Of like Iron Man's Unibeam would be able to be swapped out with a different one at some point. They are still considering that alongside what the new gear rework system would be. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
I have a question for you, Christian.
mm-hmm.
Um, I just thought of this.
Okay.
Hopefully this isn't too big. But do you think if Cyberpunk came out before this game, that this game released last year? Because like I'm starting to think, I feel like Cyberpunk is a huge shift for the industry where it's caused like a reflection to be like, whoa, we can't release games like this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the state of the release of this game was like dramatically different than Cyberpunk. Like the comparison is very far, but it's clear that this game was a year off, at least, from being like complete. So like I'm starting to think that if Cyberpunk came out before this game, maybe this was delayed to 2021.
I can definitely see that line of thought. I think it's a matter of who made the call, if it was a Square thing, if it was a Marvel thing, but I could definitely see a world where the game got pushed again. But I do think it's a slight, like you're mentioning, it's a different beast, but also the idea that this game came towards the end of a full, well, actually, like after a full year drought of MCU content, and how big that is. I do think that there's a world where the game, maybe it would have shipped in like December or something, but I do think there is a world where it could have been pushed to 2021. For sure.
Right. And I only ask that because of the recency of Cyberpunk and just the continual news that we just keep hearing about it, but also like everything we just talked about is stuff that you would almost expect to be in the game, as it is right now, or maybe like close to launch. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a little sad because I feel like if this game came out a year after it was actually released, it would have been in such a good state, I feel, or such a better state, I'll say.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I can't wait for the 1 year anniversary of this game after the history I've seen with like Destiny 1. Like, oh baby.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
2015 Destiny, that was Taken King. That was some good eating,
Mm-hmm,
So like,
mm-hmm.
I'm very hopeful about September 21. But lastly, the one other thing I want to shout out from that stream that seemed interesting was they reiterated the idea that new villains can drop regardless of anything. So like they could drop a new villain next week and we wouldn't have the cloning lab or Hawkeye for another 3 or 4. Like they made it a point to say, hey, villains can drop whenever.
Cool. I think they should just take that approach for pretty much everything, except for the big stuff like characters or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like any addition to multiplayer, just drop it. It really doesn't have to be around anything. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure they are much smarter about that than I am. So.
Yeah, and plus we did see with the Tachyon Rifts, it's like that piece of content was ready and they dropped it when it was ready. So I assume totally. If there was a piece of content, they would drop it when it was ready. I don't know if like all we can look to for an example of that is Tachyon Rifts, which was a very small twist on what the game already offered. I don't know if the response to that or just the development pipeline is going to influence what drops when. Like, if they have another mode that is similar to that, I don't know if they drop that randomly, if they'd want to include that with a big patch or what. But that actually reminded me also, somebody in the chat asked about a Horde Mode, which is something you and I have discussed a lot on the show. And they again mentioned that it's something they're looking into, and there's potentially a mechanic like that in a future piece of content. So that's pretty interesting. I would like to see that popped out into just something you can queue up into.
Yeah, Horde Mode with your friends is, I think, a really great piece of multiplayer content, and I think that's a great idea. So
yeah, and like
that'd be cool.
Honestly, I'll meet in the middle. We don't even need to have a Battle of New York raid. Honestly, okay, do your Wakanda thing. Just Horde Mode on Long Island, like, or Manhattan, anything, like, please. Because like imagine that, like endless waves survival of like a Kree invasion flying through New
Sure.
York City, like that just makes sense.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
So,
That'd be very fun.
um, so this was a welcome week, I think, in terms of stuff to discuss, even if there is no focus or concentration on dates. Hearing what they prioritized, what they actually discussed, I think is a good insight into what we can expect looking forward. Um, Unfortunately, though, there was no stream with the or play with the devs stream this week as of today recording. Um, Maybe unrelated, somebody on Reddit doxed a developer at Crystal Dynamics for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, terrible.
Yeah.
It's just like such a violent invasion of someone's right to privacy. Um, like gamers are the worst.
Yeah.
Like we just hear just so many pieces of like toxic fandom where a game comes out and it doesn't meet their expectations and they just like feel some sort of necessity to do something just completely terrible and
Mm-hmm.
illegal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awful, and I hope that particular dev is doing well despite that.
Yeah. Like, I feel like this entire game has had an uphill battle. Like, some things have been justified of like, hey, why is this not working out this way? But like,
Yeah,
you mentioned, it's like it's a game. Like don't do it. Like don't even like if you don't have a good constructive piece of criticism to give towards Crystal or Square, then be silent about it or think of how to do that constructively. They've given you several opportunities on how to do that. Like you and I, even before recording today, we filled out a survey um, for feedback, and this is the second survey they've released to their player base. Like, and they look on the subreddit. They're pretty active there still. Like, there are avenues to talk to them in a humane, professional way. If anybody thinks doxing is the way to go about doing anything, fuck off.
yeah,
I, it makes me mad. It makes me very
yeah.
mad.
It's like I think we've been very optimistic about the game, and we've also been very critical at points. But like Jesus, there's a fine line of being critical and being like an absolute piece of shit.
Yeah.
So don't be a piece of shit. That's
Mm-hmm.
my advice.
Yeah. So, we'll see if the devs stream returns next week. I wasn't in chat as it was being streamed, so I don't know how toxic or problematic or any like if they were haggling or hassling them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we'll see if it comes back next week. I don't know if these things are related. I'd assume they are, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. With that, I wanted to give a little update because last episode I mentioned that one of my friends got the game, and later that night, as of recording, and a lot of last weekend, I played a good amount of Avengers with my friend I played with at lunch and my friend who just got the game. Um,
Excellent.
it was welcome. I've hopped back in as Kate, just to continue that gear grind. She's around like 110 right now, I think.
Ooh.
So we're getting up there. But yeah, just getting back in it, and I had like a 4 or 5 hour session I think on Sunday, so it was a good chunk of time back with the game again. And Jack, it's a fun game. It's a really fun game to play, and
It
like
is.
to fight things and to like see these characters, the Avengers, working together, uh, trying to pull off cool combos. Like it's a very fun game to play, and it just like reinforces the point that the biggest issue is just the objectives and the lack of incentive to do anything. Like I made my own fun in those 4 or 5 hours with my friend.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think imagination and determination. You really have to have that to enjoy this game in a way, as it is right now. I'm curious to think what your friend who just got it thought of it.
So they've been having a good time with it. They played a little bit of the beta, and they've actually had it for a couple weeks, but they just haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their main is Kamala
Nice.
because they like the powers because it reminds them of the main character of One Piece, so
Oh,
that's
very
fun.
cool.
But yeah, we did a few harm room challenges, get them leveled up a little bit. We did I don't know if we did a vault, but we did a couple we did the Manhattan, the New York City map where you like go rescue the Inhumans. We did that.
Nice.
And I think the one in Jersey City just to like help them get some gear to boost up. And it was fun. Like helping them through gave me an incentive, to like Sherpa them. And from their perspective, like as far as I know, they were having a good time. Like they like the powers, they think it's fun to play, and we were having a good chat. Just catching up about stuff the way that you do sometimes with your friends in random games. But
Yeah,
it was a good experience.
definitely. Like what you're saying, like there's a base to this game of like fun combat and banter between the characters, right? Like
Hmm.
that's just always present, and I think it's what makes this game a good to great game. But
Hmm.
yeah, it is the content right now. But in a way, like the content that's in the game right now is new to them, and through them, it's sort of new to you in a way because you can sort of experience that with your friend. So that's exciting. That's a
Hmm.
very wholesome story. Glad to hear
Yeah.
it.
Plus, it's been nice too because haven't maxed out all my characters. Like, with the exception of Kamala and Hulk, everybody's level 50. But the power level range is wide. Like, I
Mm.
think my Iron Man. Actually, no, Iron Man isn't level 50 either. He's 25. But for the missions where we were doing patrols, I was playing as Kate to just get better gear. But doing the harm rooms, I was like, oh, I'll just hop in as like Iron Man or Hulk and level up that way for them. So it's again incentivizing me to play more with characters that I don't typically use, which I like. But yeah, you're right. It is. There's good things here, man. Like it reminded me, it was a really good experience and reignited what I really liked about the game. I think.
Totally. Hopefully,
So,
there's some new stuff soon.
do you have anything to add for your experience with the game lately?
I like after I did the challenge card for Kate, I just like have no real reason to play the game, so I just haven't been playing it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, with that, I want to bring up a topic for Stark Realities. Um, so it is the third week of January. We've had our discussion so far about the state of the game and where the devs are focusing their attention. How are you feeling about new content right now in regards to when we're gonna get it? When should we not like lean into the doom aspect of it of like, oh, is this game ruined? Is it they're gonna just ship what they promised and then it's over? Like what where are you at right now in terms of the constant waiting and the seeing what's gonna happen and anything seemingly could happen anytime? Like how are you sitting with that?
So the game right now is not in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
I usually get upset when people describe the state of a game as being dead, especially in regards to Apex. I get very defensive about that game because it's clearly
Mm-hmm.
like people say that all the time. Like, dude, no. Look at any Apex Legends YouTube video with millions of views, and EA said it's $1 billion franchise. Regardless, I think if someone said that to me about Avengers, that it was a dead game, I probably wouldn't be as offended as I would be about Apex because right now it's kind of fair to say that because the drips and drabs of content are very few and far between, right? Like we've really only gotten Kate as a significant piece of content, and that was like 2 months after launch. So yeah, I feel like there has to be something within the next 2 months. Like there has to be something of consequence in the next 2 months, or else this game I think, is probably doomed. Because this is supposed to be an ongoing game, right? And so far we really haven't gotten anything that significant aside from Kate, but that really didn't push anything past like 2 weeks or so of playtime.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have a question here: are heroes enough? I don't really think so. I think, like we've been saying for weeks, we really need multiplayer content. Like, we need an incentive to actually get into this game that'll like hold our attention, and we just haven't gotten that. So everything is very urgent, and like, of course, release the stuff that you need to release when it's ready. But like, I hope that soon. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. Because, like, what I've been noticing, and I'm sure you felt this even longer because you maxed out the roster pretty quickly. Heroes are good, and from how much I love the campaign of this game and the way the characters exist, the way they banter with each other, I really, really love their take on the Marvel Universe. I loved that with Kate as well, and I loved her story and her performance. All of that's great. That's one of my favorite things about this game. But, like, I'm leveling Kate up right now, right? I want to get her to level cap because I just want to have her ready on the random day that the cloning lab drops, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's tough because, like, Thor I already got there because Thor is my main. I was like, I'm playing the game so much. I put like 110 hours or probably 100 hours in as Thor, and everything else has been Kate so far.
Mm.
And, like, there's no reason to get your characters fully maxed if there's nothing to do with them, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like an easy solution to that might be to just give a level cap increase, but if we want to compare that to a Destiny or something that really only comes with a major expansion, and I feel like it would only be a matter of time before we get into the same scenario where we were before a level cap increase. But yeah, it's like I know characters are probably priority and they are exciting. Like, if you drop Black Panther, I'd be super hyped to do that. And I would continue to not touch Thor for a little while. You know, like, it's a weird balance. I'm sure that the way the game launched and having to deal with just performance and stability for the first like 8 weeks wasn't what they wanted to be focusing on. So obviously that's thrown a wrench in the plans, and there was like the wildfires and COVID as well. So
Yeah.
like it is tricky. I would hope that stuff like the cloning lab is the priority, and the characters, while I'm sure there is a schedule that they are supposed to be hitting, I'm only so excited about a character. It is hype. It's a good in the moment thing, but after a month with them, it's like, so what can I do with them now? You know, that's the big
Yeah.
thing.
And characters are, in a way, sort of risky because you could release a character and only a certain amount of people would actually like them enough to like be their main, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to Apex like I always do because I'm a shill. Like, with every season, Apex generally introduces a new character, and most of the time, well, I wouldn't even say most of the time, depending on the character, they're either, oh, I'll mess around with them a little bit, or I don't feel enough. Like, recently they released Horizon
Mm-hmm.
for Apex, and I was like, I'm not really feeling Horizon. I'm probably not going to play her that much. But Crypto was the season 3 character that they released, and I was like, oh man, he's one of my mains. So in a way, that's risky enough where like someone could be playing a new character. Say like Clint comes out, and there's a lot with Clint being tied to Kate, of course, but even beyond that, you could have someone play that character and be like, I'm not really feeling it. This hasn't really drawn me back. I think they should be releasing characters with further content, like with multiplayer content,
Mm-hmm.
to actually like balance that out. So like if someone doesn't like a character, how they play, they still have that multiplayer content to use their other characters with.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope the release schedule looks something like that, where it's like a character, you know, one particular week, and then like a week or two later, or even during that release, there's multiplayer content. I think that's a sustainable way to release content going forward.
Yeah, I would hope that is the norm, right? Like, obviously, that is not what happened with Kate. I assume that Clint is going to be very similar to Kate in terms of the offering because of the way they packaged it. They're like, oh, it's a double feature. I'd imagine the same thing with Spider Man, but from what we've heard rumblings about and leaks about Black Panther dropping alongside Wakanda as a new region and a raid with Claw and Wakanda, that's exactly what you're talking about, and that's what I want very badly out of these character drops, you know? Um, so I would hope that if not every character, then at least a couple a year come with something like you're asking. Like, let's say for just the conversation, Clint drops in February, Spider Man sometime in March, because I think that was the leak date. It's only on PlayStation, so it's kind of irrelevant to this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say Black Panther hits like April or May, and alongside Black Panther, we get the Wakanda region, a Wakanda raid, a raid exclusive gear set to incentivize playing it over and over again. And then maybe we get a hero or two in the summer that are on the level of Kate or Clint. And then at the end of year one, next September, we get Carol Danvers with another raid to like do the big conclusion with the AIM stuff with Monica. And it's in tandem with content and a character the way Black Panther we're presuming is going to be. I think that would also be okay.
Yeah, honestly, that sounds like the perfect scenario, and I would say perfect being you could swap the word realistic.
Yeah.
But I think we've seen with this game, anytime we set sort of expectations for it, we are almost always like the game never meets those expectations, even if they are to us realistic. They might not be realistic to what the devs are actually doing. You have a question here on the doc uh, where you're asking like when we can start to worry about the game's future. I think to an extent you and I are probably already there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe lesser to a lesser extent than most people are, because I think we give the game the benefit of the doubt. But I think if we get to a point where it's like May or June and nothing substantial has come out that has revitalized the game, then I think it's at like a very I think it's in the red zone at that point where
Yeah.
they might just be like, all right, there's nothing we can do for this game to stick some adrenaline in the game to like really get it going again, and we might just have to drop it because I think that's a possibility of this game because it's not the moneymaker that Square wanted it to be,
Mm-hmm.
and by the end of year one, if Square's just like we couldn't make Avengers, we couldn't like meet the vision that we wanted for Avengers, so like there's no point in continuing it. I think that's a very strong possibility, which is really sad.
Yeah. I think that's a fair thing to think of, you know? Like, I think if that Black Panther and Wakanda raid is not out in the first half of this year, and in addition to that, some semblance of a roadmap, then I do think it is like I feel like it's a bit hyperbolic to do the Anthem comparisons to the extent I've seen them right now because like
Yeah.
Anthem literally had nothing, you know, it still has nothing. This game, while not major, did have a character added. You know, we got a new mode. We have very tangible things of what is about to hit next. You know, there's the cloning lab. There's uh, the fight with the super adaptoid,
Yeah.
um, and like a couple other things. So I don't think it's doom and gloom yet, but come May, if there's still no official thing for Black Panther, if it's not out, you know, then I do think I'll be a little more worried and in line with the thought process I've seen where it's like, oh, dead game, you know.
Yeah.
And at that point, I would question if they just like, hey, you know what? We're just gonna make an Avengers 2, Battlefront 2 scenario. Like,
Yep.
just we gave it our shot this time. We learned a lot of lessons, and then in 2024 or 25, it's like here's Avengers 2. with a lot more content. Next gen only. Like, I could see a world where that's what we end up getting. We won't know, but I'm not saying the sky's falling just yet. You know.
No, dude, I I have faith.
I do
I
too.
do, because like I feel like the devs are really reaching out in ways like you mentioned the survey and the weekly sort of like dev streams that they do where they're clearly working on the game. It's not like they're sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and like we mentioned it earlier, but they're in a really bad spot right now. Like, there's no one is saying that this game's in a good spot right now because it's clearly not. Um, they're behind right now, and they really need to push this stuff out to get this game going again. And it's not like they're not gonna do that. I think they're just waiting until stuff is ready. But yeah, we're getting close to the point of no return, I think.
So,
But I don't see it getting to that. But I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning too. We're still in a pandemic, like still.
Totally.
So I'll amend like if Black Panther doesn't like if we don't see something about the Wakanda stuff from Black Panther in the first half, then I'll be more worried. You know, like it doesn't have to drop this soon because I know we don't know when people are going to get back to work and all that.
Yeah.
In offices. And even in the dev stream, they mentioned that the communications team, like the PR, is the last, like lowest priority of people to get back into the office. So I know that's a big thing. Again, the subreddit is very existential recently. A lot of calls for just like, hey, just communicate with us. But like, you know, to some extent, hands are tied. You know, there's a lot of stuff with this game that goes beyond just the developers, but
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I got faith. I hope I'm not foolish, but I have faith.
Agreed.
Well, like I said, a lot to cover with Marvel's Avengers this week, but meanwhile, in the MCU, WandaVision, episode 3, dropped today.
It sure did.
Now, I want to say this first. I I know I was talking up my morning earlier, but man, like just don't drop it at 3 a.m. East Coast, please.
Yeah, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. What I do is I did this for The Mandalorian, and I like it. I honestly like having to do this in a way. I wake up at 7 in the morning. I do not look at my phone. I put on like a little thing of coffee on my Keurig. Maybe I'm listening to the Daily for like 5 minutes. I run over to my TV, turn it on, put my headphones on because I want to have that studio experience or whatever, and I just watch for 30 minutes, and it's great.
Yeah, it is welcome, you know. Sometimes I sleep in and I'm like, oh, I got a show to prep, and I'm like, or for at least with Mandalorian, I was like, I gotta push Manda to tonight and try to avoid it, but yeah, it's a nice ritual for the mornings on Fridays, but I love watching anything, like literally anything when it's dark outside, and I don't want to wake up at
Yes,
3 a.m.
that's a good point. That's a
So,
really good point.
so we'll see if that changes in the future, but we before we get into spoilers, Jack,
Yeah.
initial thoughts this week on WandaVision, because last week we both were positive on the show. You seemed like you were still looking for ways to get deeper into it. This week, has anything changed for you?
Yes, dramatically actually.
Okay, great.
So like what you said. I was positive last week. I think both those episodes sort of served as a setup to what the show is actually trying to do. A lot of it was gimmicky in a way, but fun and welcome and expected when you're doing that sort of thing. But we really didn't get much of what was actually happening outside of the TV show sort of shtick that they're running with. But with this episode, we do, and like we said, we won't get into it right now. But man, this show is really making me feel some Watchmen comparisons. Where
Really?
like, yeah, maybe like not in terms of like overall quality. I'm saying like week by week, there's a mystery that
Mm-hmm.
they are clearly setting up, and you get drips and drabs as it goes. And by the end of it, it's like you're exposed to this whole wide ranging thing that they've done. And yeah, I'm getting the exact same vibes where there's something happening, and you get like a little bit every time, every episode.
Mm-hmm.
But the tone just like decreases every week, where it's like, what is happening? And that is especially prominent with this episode, and I really, really enjoyed this episode. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, clear like last week I loved it. I was really into the atmosphere they set up and that mystery that you mentioned, automatically skyrocketed for me. Like it is I really think one of my favorite things, at least conceptually, that Marvel Studios has done. And this week is just building on that, I think. It it nailed a really good tone this week that I think again is just diving deeper into the stuff that was unsettling for the first two episodes, and even more this time. But I agree with you. I think it's a really solid one. It's really building off of what was set up already pretty well, and more than anything, it really makes me want Marvel to do a true horror thing because the way they're teasing this mystery and like it's unsettling, but in a way that like it's like weren't there like when we were in middle school there were some YouTube things that were like puppets that were like very very dark, but like it's weird because they're puppets, so it doesn't seem like it's gonna be dark.
Oh, dude, are you talking about Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared?
I think so.
Where it's like green is not a creative color?
Sure.
Oh, I hated that. I know
Like
exactly what you're talking about.
I don't like that. Like I never was a fan of that, but like I think taking that and planting it into the Marvel universe, I love the idea of that. Like Twin Peaks vibes,
Yes.
David Lynch in general. Like there, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to like go too far, but I do think that the thing they are doing here is incredibly unique to this universe, and it's touching on things in ways that I never expected Marvel to do. I think.
Yeah. So I think those comparisons are very good. For me, at least right now, I think it's too early for me to say like this is like one of my favorite things that Marvel has done, but I can
Mm-hmm.
totally see myself like 7 weeks from now being on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I, I was thinking this. I've watched this episode twice already, and I really applaud Marvel's commitment to this experiment because this
Yeah.
is an experiment. Where I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking of anything that the MCU has done has been the most common complaint of MCU haters is that everything's the same in the MCU, which to an extent I can see. Tonally, especially with like Guardians and like Thor Ragnarok, there are some branching narratives and ways that they treat the stories that they're telling, but largely the MCU does have similar tone, and I get that. You cannot say that about this show,
Mm-hmm.
and of course we've been saying it. Phase 4 is going to be the weirdest phase. I am very excited about that, especially after this week's episode. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I do want like the horror comparison you made. I really do want the MCU to just go out there and like
Mm-hmm.
risk it all because they're doing that with the show, and so far it's proved very interesting. And even more so than last week, I am really on board now. Where I'm going to be waking up next Friday like ready to go.
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, like I think specifically the way it's taking these two characters, which I have always loved Wanda and Vision. They're two of
Yeah.
my favorites, and I've been waiting for them to really get a spotlight. And again, like our biggest praise last week, I think, was the performance of Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, like being able to flex with these characters, and it's just so great to watch. And I really, really hope that Vision makes it out of this alive because man, I forgot how much I loved Vision. Like I missed him in Endgame. I really love Vision.
Yeah, Vision's awesome.
So
Yeah, I'm with you.
why don't we dip into spoilers then? If you haven't seen the episode, come back for this discussion. But WandaVision episode 3. I noticed that the first two episodes have titles now.
Yeah. Are you? Oh yes, I did notice that on Disney Plus. It's not just episode 1, episode 2. Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah,
I did
because
notice that as
Mandalorian
well.
did the same thing. It was like chapter 1, and then things
Yep.
would like change in time. But yeah, so episode 1 is called "Filmed in Front of a Live Studio Audience," which is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
Episode 2 was "Don't Turn That Dial," I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
And episode 3 is now in color.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in full color. Even more so, I think, than the first 2 weeks. It's very apparent that the way they shot this episode does feel 70s. Like,
oh my god.
in every sense.
Yeah, they're man, they nailed it, I think, especially with this episode. Like, the colors are very 70s, and that just goes to the clothes that everyone's wearing, of course. You get it especially in the intro song to this episode, which is cool that they do that every week now. But the focus on building sets for this particular episode, and when Vision goes over to talk to Herb, you can clearly tell that his house is like a painted set.
Yes.
They nailed it, dude. Another thing I noticed was the backyard that Vision was building a swing. That has to be like a very clear nod to the Brady Bunch yard, because it looks exactly like it. And the staircase as well is very similar.
So I'm not super familiar with the Brady Bunch, but was the intro, was that the Brady Bunch? Because I know they ended with like the hexagon panels that looked like kind of the grid.
Yeah, that's a good call. Very similar. I mentioned last week the shapes that they're all in. That's continuing this week, and I really think that's doubling down to the idea of those characters being trapped inside of some sort of constructed reality, which now, we don't know exactly the extent of that, but
right.
I do think that by the end of this we will see that as, because that's continuing every episode, that they're being trapped some way or another.
Yeah, so I have a question for you. Now, we'll draw it back to the main focus of what this podcast is, and that's Marvel's Avengers. Now, there's a lot of hexagons in Marvel's Avengers, Jack, because of AIM. Yep. I know we have an MCU AIM already, and it's very different from comic AIM and game AIM. But is there there was even a beekeeper last week. Like, is there a world where like AIM is sort of retooled and involved in this somehow? I know we see the sword logo everywhere, but like I feel like that imagery is just tied to AIM.
No, I don't think so. I think it is. I think it's very sword focused. Of course, I actually think the shape is a pentagon. I really could be wrong.
Well, a pentagon is like pointed up top, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, though, isn't it?
I can double check, but I could have sworn that the intro for WandaVision this week had hexagons.
I think you're right. I actually, because hexagon is 6-sided, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you're right. I'm wrong. My apologies.
Yeah, because like honeycomb. That's where my mind went, and then we had the beekeeper last week. So like I don't know.
Yep. That's a good call. That is a good call. But no, I don't think AIM is involved. Well, we haven't seen that yet. But yeah. If you're right, dude, you are right, and you've called things before, so
we'll see what happens.
I'll give you the credit.
But going back to what you mentioned about being trapped, this week we did get a lot of that because the doctor at the end of the episode is saying like, oh, you can't escape a small town, you know? And then there was also, I think Monica, or I forget, what's her name? Geraldine. I think she mentioned something about being trapped, right?
Yeah. Dude, if you want to talk about being trapped, you want me to read the commercial?
Oh, please.
So the narrator of the commercial, which I love how they do that every week.
Yeah, me too.
So, and you, like we were saying last week, there was a bunch of articles talking about Wanda's trauma and how the commercials essentially relate to her past trauma and how she's sort of contemplating that in whatever this reality is right now. The main character of the commercial is a woman who's just like experiencing a lot of home-related issues, and the narrator is like, you want to like have an escape from this? And she's like, boy, do I. And then the narrator reads, escape to a world all your own, where your problems float away. When you want to get away, but you don't want to go anywhere. Hydra Soak. Find the goddess within. So yeah, essentially like this idea of escapism and not having to physically go anywhere, but being whisked away into this sort of escape from, as it turns out, reality. So yeah, they're really doubling down on that this week.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't fully pick up on it. I thought it was just like a Hydra nod, but now that you're saying that too, the care's floating away. I forget if this is after the commercial break, but like Vision literally floats.
Yep.
Is that something?
Yeah, totally. I thought of that as well. Like her problems as it is after Endgame is Vision being dead.
Yeah.
Right? That's like her main. Yeah, so that's a really good call.
Yeah, but I'm with you. I really love how they're doing the continued commercial breaks. One thing I noticed this episode that I was kind of waiting on was Agnes. I was kind of surprised she didn't have a role to play in this one very much. I thought she was going to show up to help deliver the twins, but clearly she was busy doing something else. She was like whispering some things to Herb towards the end of the episode, and
yeah, she seemed like the past two episodes. She seemed to have, like what you said, like more of a role to play and like sort of more agency. She seems very helpless in this episode. Like she looks to Herb, the neighbor, and is like petrified.
Yeah, I wonder if, because my read on it was like things were going wrong, and she was trying to do damage control. That's how I read it.
Yeah, like hey, like you're thinking like she looked at Herb and be like, hey, don't say anything, because clearly Vision twice in this episode has come to a realization.
Yeah, so like I'm wondering if she has some hand in what's going on, because like people have thrown around like Mephisto and
they think she's like Agatha Harkness.
Yeah, and in the comics, as far as I know, Agatha Harkness is like Wanda's mentor, but like I wonder if Agnes has like an antagonistic thing going on, like if she's sort of perpetuating this reality and like trying to keep it locked down the way it is.
Yeah, that's sort of where my line of thinking was last week with my theory. Like I do think that I feel like she is starting to lose control. Like I feel like Wanda like my theory was basically like Wanda signed a deal with the devil, which is Mephisto, to like, hey, you can get Vision back, but like I don't know, I want to use your power or something like that. I feel like Wanda is becoming more and more in control of this constructed reality, and that is causing more issues. So it seems like Agnes may be taking a back seat more now.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Herb, though, that first interaction.
Yes.
That was like exactly what I was talking about in the spoiler-free part of like, oh yeah, these like David Lynch vibes, and like there was the laugh track going on, and he was just like staring out. Oh, it was so good. Yeah. It was so good.
Clearly, like that is an indication of this, but just like anything else in this episode, like this reality is starting to break down. Like there are some issues at play that, like things are getting out of control. It seems.
You mentioned Vision comes to a realization 2 times. The first one I feel like it's like a constant one almost, because he definitely has some looks when he's talking to the doctor.
Yeah.
And Herb, and then when he goes in and talks to Wanda, and then we get like a little glitch in the tape, and then it goes back.
Dude, I rewound at that part. Where like I knew obviously that's what was happening, but they edited it in such a way where it looked like Disney Plus like skipped a little bit. And I was like, I rewound it, and then of course it happened again. I was like, that was perfect, because it looked very genuine.
Yeah, because I actually did is that when Vision came in the front door looking like Vision, and then he said something, right? And then that happened?
Yeah, that was after Herb, I think, with sawing the wall.
Because I rewound it too, but it wasn't like to catch something. It was like I noticed they did the glitch, and I was like, oh, this is actually like super important. I should like rewind and see the context for this. And again, I rewound again to like make sure of this. I think this is the second time. First, last week I said it was Wanda, but I really think that when he's talking to Wanda and he's like, something's going on here, something's at play. I swear to God, he looks into the camera.
I'm gonna have to go back because that's the second time you've mentioned that, and I didn't
Yeah,
pick up
like
on that.
the first time it was harder to see because it was like the long shot and it was Wanda at the far end of the table and it looked like she looked at the camera. But this was very much like I think Vision is like looking into this camera of not like our view of the world, but like the in-universe camera,
Yeah.
because it's a TV show, um, which I thought was very, very cool. And I hope that's what's going on there.
Um, I want to ask you about this because something I noticed particularly this episode was this idea of like, and I guess this has gone throughout the entirety of the three episodes of Wanda sort of, if she is creating this reality, her sort of quest for perfection, which is in a way like sort of like idealized life, right? Of course, like that's how TV shows generally in like the later half of the 20th century have just like sort of shown American life as this sort of like beautiful, like everything wraps up in a bow by the end of the episode, right? And that's something she sort of hasn't had in her life, which maybe she did at a younger life, but that was obviously stripped away from Hydra. And that idea of perfection, I think, is interesting when you compare it to Tom King's run of Vision, where that whole run was Vision and his family's quest for normalcy, which like they essentially like they try to be this like normal American family, and by the end of the first issue they're already there because they already have so many issues, though they're different. They still have like the same normal sort of issues that plague American families, but with Wanda sort of trying to create this perfect realization for her life, like there are some issues. I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and this week there's two direct issues that she corrects. The first being the Vision thing where he's questioning the reality, and the second is Geraldine, which that was like, I think that might have been the more unsettling thing because
Yeah.
the way she was like I got some antagonistic vibes from Wanda that I'm curious if we build up further in the future. Like,
Yeah, because yeah, sorry, go for it.
because I know some people have been speculating of like, oh, is Wanda gonna become a villain now or something? Which I don't know how I'd feel about that because I really love her, but like you would assume that Geraldine and the fact that she has the sword thing and sword in general because of the ties to Fury is like a net good for the world, right? And she was giving her like death eyes, and then we cut back to Vision and Herb, and then when he comes back in, she's gone, and we see that she gets like yeeted into the real world through that
Right.
weird dimension portal. But yeah, that scene was something.
Yeah, because it was. You're right. It's very unsettling because, especially with the music we got, like it's pretty much the first time we heard MCU style music or music that wasn't in line with the sort of 70s music. I think maybe we got it with the Beekeeper last time, but it was so prevalent with that scene where Wanda essentially breaks from her 70s persona, where she's like, I was a twin, talking about Pietro, and
Right.
starts singing in Sokovian. And then I think that sort of breaks Geraldine's persona as well, where she's like, which is much more blatant, I think, where she's like, "You, he was killed by Ultron, wasn't he?" And that just sets Wanda off. Yeah, so it seems like she is a sword operative of some sort,
Which
and it, yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, which makes sense because like not to like spoil anything, but like there's a casting sheet of like who she actually is that like would
Right.
make sense if she's for sword. But continue.
Yeah. So Wanda is the one who throws her out.
Yes.
So it seems that Wanda has some semblance of control if not total, at least some. And she realizes that Geraldine is an outsider to this, and like tosses her out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that going forward. Something else I noticed, this is really small and nitpicky. The entire episode, Vision is wearing a sport coat with like a sweater and a shirt and tie underneath.
Mm-hmm.
This is super nitpicky. One part of the shirt collar is tucked in and the other part is tucked out. And every scene he shows up with that attire, that remains as so. Like, like both aren't tucked in or both aren't tucked out. It's that like one tucked in, one tucked out. And it seems like, to me at least, I read that as, of course, me like really reading into it because the show invites you to do that.
Yeah.
But me reading into that being like this isn't perfect, clearly.
Yeah.
And like something is askew, even like in the most tiny, minute way. Something is wrong here, and that was sort of how I read that.
Jack, I was just gonna say, what if it's intentional? Because
it is.
I wonder. This is reading super deep into it, but I wonder if this is like some weird thing of maybe hinting towards Vision coming back in a different way. Because what if there was the whole thing of, and we've touched on it in the first 2 episodes, of like the synthezoid stuff. He's basically a machine. Wanda's like, see your son in your true self, like, and he turns into Vision robot that we know. But like, with the hindsight of the last episode and like him getting drunk basically and all that stuff, like, what if he's losing that grasp on the computer part of him, and like the malfunction with the collar is on a very, very, very subtle, minute level, trying to go into the whole like, oh, he's becoming more human now. He's becoming personified and like existing beyond the Infinity Stone, which is like what was theorized by Banner in Infinity War.
Right.
I don't know.
Like, you and I both took film classes. As
Can you tell?
I think we heard in probably every film class that like anything that happens in a film generally is on purpose. So I think that was a purposeful inclusion. So I think that was just sort of a nod to, this something's wrong here, and it could be something to that line too, where Vision is becoming more human. So that's a good point.
Yeah. On the surface like sitcom level though, I did like the gimmick this week of the whole like abridged pregnancy and Vision freaking out, panicking and everything. I thought like that was all really wholesome and everything, and
the humor this week was especially good, I think.
Yeah, I think they both did a great job, and I really liked. It was like very not introspective, but like for Elizabeth Olsen, like she had to carry a lot of it by herself because like Vision was out for a good chunk. But yeah, all this like the character building stuff this week I really, really liked too. So
totally. Going along that with character relations, I think with the previous 2 episodes, they showed Wanda and Vision as a team that were keeping a secret away, and the secret was their powers from everyone else. This week, I feel like there is a barrier between them now that wasn't there beforehand. Because this is the first time where you mentioned Wanda like essentially edits Vision in a way where like he comes to her saying that he has a realization of like, hey, something's not right here. Right. And like the look on Wanda's face is like terror because she's realizing seemingly that like, I don't know, it seems like they're not in it together right now. Like I thought maybe Vision was in on it, on whatever this happens to be. Like maybe Wanda was like, hey, you're a resurrected corpse of your past self. It seems like he's pretty oblivious to that, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, like I'm with you, but at the same time, I'm kind of with Wanda. Like I just want more Vision. I want more Vision in the MCU.
I do too. I don't know why I was, because I've said it before. Like the relationship aspects of the MCU, except for Peggy and Steve, usually like don't do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And MJ and Peter, I do like that.
Mm-hmm.
But Vision and Wanda, man, like in Infinity War, really did it for me. Like to
Mm-hmm.
a point where I was like sobbing at the Vision and Wanda scene at the very end of that movie. So yeah, I'm totally with you. I really want them to continue, and I'm glad this series is shining a spotlight on them.
Absolutely. And hopefully did I tell you that I have like a giant from Age of Ultron? I have a giant Vision cardboard cutout that I bought at Boston Comic Con.
Really, I didn't know that.
I will send a picture to you after, and I'll throw it in the
Nice.
episode. But I hope I have a reason to look at that proudly now.
Yeah.
But uh, I know there was a lot of like small things this episode. So is there anything unsaid that you want to touch on in terms of building that mystery or surface level stuff for the sitcom aspect or anything before we wrap up?
We never even discussed the kids,
Oh
Tommy and Billy.
yeah. Oh okay. Yeah yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on in this episode where, like, of course, the whole episode is about them, but your mind is focused elsewhere, like reading into everything. But yeah,
So at the end, when they're in the crib and she's singing, the one on the right, did it look like the like forehead of the kid had like the Vision widow's peak with a diamond or something in it?
oh, like the hair.
No, like it looked like a raised skin. It looked like they
Oh,
had like a similar peak the way Vision does with a circle for representing the Infinity Stone or something. Like it looked. It could have just been like the makeup on did babies in Hollywood wear makeup? I don't know.
who
Whatever.
knows?
Like it looked off to me. It looked a little too specific and too similar to Vision to be a coincidence.
You might be onto something. I didn't catch that.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and watch it.
Okay.
But that could be interesting.
So I know you've watched it twice, and I'm assuming you've looked into more theories, but I know in the comics Wanda has twin children, I think, with Vision, and
Yeah.
I know they become something, but any nods that you picked up on the internet this week for the kids?
I try to stay away as much as possible, actually, from like I'll watch like a video or two, just like breaking down the episode, or like listen to people like Jeremy Johns' reviews. I listen to every week. I watch IGN's reviews, and I'll watch maybe a new Rockstar's video. I don't like focusing on too much because for like a show like Westworld, I tuned in every week to hear people's theories, and I knew what was happening with that show like by week 3, so that kind of ruined it. But I do think that her kids turn out to be mutants in the comics. Is that correct? You probably know more than I do.
So I think one is called like Wiccan or something. I forget what they are, but there are twins. They are mutants. I'd imagine that if we build off this in the future of the MCU, it's not maybe mutants. It could just be whatever a miracle they called her that I think because they
Yeah.
couldn't call her a mutant. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see what develops of this. Are these children even real? Like I don't know.
Yeah, we're at a point right now where we don't know like the ramifications of what's happening. Like Vision is dead for all intents and purposes, and we don't know what made him come back right now. Into that same breath, like these kids shouldn't exist.
Oh,
So yeah,
okay. So
what do you
I
got?
fact checked. Wiccan and Speed are the name of Wanda's children for their like superhero personas,
Okay.
and I believe they're both Young Avengers in the comics.
Oh, okay.
So curious to see if we build on that.
If we do, we're getting another show out of this, out of Wiccan and Speed rather. That'll be the name of
Yeah.
the show.
Or hey, it seems like we're building towards Young Avengers to be something. We got Kate. We got
Yes, Spidey.
Ms. Marvel. You know, like we'll see what happens.
Dude, I would love that. I would love that.
That would be pretty cool. But
Something I thought about this whole episode
mhm.
was at the end of Endgame where Thanos looks at Scarlet Witch and she was like, "You took everything from me," and he's like, "I have no clue who you are." She's like, "You
Yeah.
will," and they're like, destroys him, and he calls on his like whole armada to like fire on everything because Scarlet Witch, Wanda, was the one to like bring Thanos to his knees.
Yeah.
And Kevin Feige has said like Scarlet Witch is he said this about a bunch of characters, but at a certain point he has said that Scarlet Witch is like the most powerful character so far in the MCU.
Oh, I am right there. I think she's the strongest Avenger, personally.
Yeah,
I've felt this way for a while, and I know we haven't seen that yet, but like as far as untapped potential goes, it's gonna be her. She's gonna be the one.
exactly. I think this show, I really hope, presumably Wanda continues. I would hope so.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be really sad if she didn't. But I think this whole show is setting up that idea of her being the most powerful Avenger, because like she is manipulating time. Well, she's manipulating reality at least in like dramatic ways, and like you see it like she wills things into existence. Like there's a stork here that's probably her doing, and she's trying to like shoot it out of existence. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Is she gonna be the villain of Doctor Strange too? Is that what it is?
Ooh,
Like I don't
yeah,
know.
because there's some involvement with her in that show or with that movie.
Um, and I guess we can say the final thing of the episode. Geraldine gets thrown out into presumably Earth 6 or whatever the MCU is. It's not 616, I don't think.
Like
But
1,000 something or another.
yeah,
100
so like
something.
the MCU world we know. Presumably Geraldine gets thrown out into there. It looked like the dimension rift was supposed it like represented television static kind of like that
Yeah,
kind
like
of
cathodes.
vibe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and you were kind of right based on what we saw where there's a base set up in this area that says Westview. But
Yeah, I think the tagline of Westview is "It is what you make it" or something along. I'm butchering that, but it's something along the lines of like something is it is what you make it, something like that.
so I think it still is Wanda created a parallel like pocket dimension based on a real thing. And I think that Sword or whatever is set up in this like as close as they can to the source of what she represented her reality to be based on.
Yeah, that's a good call. Huge shout out to my girlfriend Lauren, who I showed her like the first few minutes of the first episode of WandaVision. Just she's not a big like MCU fan, but she's like somewhat interested. And I was like, oh, this is the tone of what they're doing. And they showed Westview and they showed a for sale sign outside their home with a phone number on it. She's like, oh, that's a New Jersey area code because she's originally from New Jersey. And I was like, holy shit, you just cracked the code of where we might be.
Very interesting.
And I've seen other people other people have made that connection and have pointed to the fact that Camp Lehigh is also in New Jersey.
Okay.
I don't know if that'll play into this, but that's another, because of course in Endgame and in the first Cap and in Winter Soldier, they go to New Jersey to Camp Lehigh. So could be interesting. But yeah, I thought I'd make that shout out because I did not expect that. I was blown away when she said
that. That's super interesting. So I'm curious to see how this builds next week. I wonder if we go, well, at the end we see the aspect ratio goes to 16:9 for normal, but also we get full screen for the in-universe sitcom world.
I wonder if they continue that because that like 4:3 was like standard until like the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
So like I wonder if in the constructed reality of like the TV shows we get 4:3, and then if we get more like interstitials to what's going on outside of that, we get the full aspect ratio, or if they're at the point now where it's just like, look, like we got the gimmick here, we're just gonna give you like the full screen effect.
Yeah, honestly, I'd be a little bummed by that because I really like that it's 4:3.
I do too.
But yeah, we'll see how it progresses because next week should be 80s, right?
Yep, big time.
Do we have a guess on what sitcom it's gonna be?
Let's see. Is Saved by the Bell an 80s thing or is that 90s?
I think that's 90s. Is like Family Matters 80s?
Family Matters is like late 80s into the 90s. That could be a thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're definitely. I'm with you with your speculation on the 90s. Like that has to be Full House.
Absolutely.
Has to be.
I forget if like we talked about it last week, but like is the 2000s gonna be like The Office or like Arrested Development or something? Like what is it?
Yeah, it could be. Dude, I feel like with the 90s, in Full House, there was a dog in Full House.
Mm-hmm.
In the Vision comic, there was a dog.
There is a dog.
Maybe we see that.
Yes. So we'll see how it plays out next week. I'm curious how much they touch on with Sword and Geraldine next week. If she's out of the universe, if we like get a cut to at some point, we see what's going on with her. If we get a full episode about her in the real world, we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very excited to see where this show goes next. And very fittingly, I just pulled up Twitter to see if any Marvel stuff broke. I see one tweet: WandaVision episode 3 thoughts, all caps. How did one Robert Downey Jr. movie get us here, bro?
That's a great call.
Yeah. So, excited to see what episode 4 is about. But, Jack, until next week, where can the Agents of Excelsior find you?
Sure. You can find me on social media, specifically on Twitter, @FascinatedJack. You can also tune into My First Mon on JoyClicks, which is our Pokemon show. Christian and I are talking about Emerald this go-around. You can also tune into the Long Play Club, where Christian and I, as well as our friends Omar and Kevin Diaz, are playing through Metal Gear Solid 1. What about you, Christian?
You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, Chun2D2, CHUN, 2, D 2. This show is available on youtube.com/joyclicks for the video version. It's also on audio services like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and a host of others. If you listen on a platform where you can rate or review, it would be greatly appreciated if you did, because it just takes a quick second and it helps us out a ton, helps us maintain being the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers from Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix podcast.
We're working on that one.
Yep. And if you want to get involved further, we got a Patreon, patreon.com/joyclicks. The $1 and $5 tiers will get you some rewards. $5 gets you producer credit on all of our podcasts and shoutouts on them. And yeah, that wraps up another week of Avengers and WandaVision. And I hope, obviously we're going to be in for a good week with WandaVision next week, but I hope we're in it for a good week for Avengers as well.
Just a little something.
Yeah, just something. Maybe like a little blog. Maybe maybe even the super adaptoid fight. Maybe something, please. Just something.
Yeah,
that'd be nice. But until then, Excelsior.
Excelsior.